Today, we'll briefly touch on the evolution of DAD, and then in the short time that we have, we've just selected only 3 of the new and improved features of DADX. We'd love to share more with you outside of this webinar, and we'll share our contact details with you at the end of this session. Today's session is not intended to be a DAD 101 session. It's simply sharing these selected new features in DADX. If you'd like a 101 session, we'd certainly be happy to do that, and just please let us know. And as I said, we'll share those contact details at the end of the session. So we'll talk through 3 of the key features that we'd like to share today: the improved user interface, the enhanced description of individual objects, and also finding information. And then we'll finish with a brief Q&A session. You'll see the Q&A button across the top of your Teams webinar screen throughout the webinar, and we'll address as many of them as possible during the last section of the webinar. And if we're unable to get to all of them within the 30-minute time frame, then we'll come back to you individually in relation to the question that you've asked. In terms of the evolution of DAD, this was really the question that was asked in the late 90s on an electrical upgrade project in Western Australia. The asset owner had a severe blind spot when it came to their complex electrical and control systems, and that was only magnified by thousands of drawings that were out of date and contained numerous errors. Now, we all know since that time, teams of experts continue to draw the designs for systems in what we describe as a flat manner, much like a picture, creating thousands of flat drawings that must be individually changed and updated as the system grows. Add to this the rapid advancements in technology leading to greater complexity, and you're left with a very costly and slow process that quickly lags behind the engineering process. Modern systems with their mix of hardware and software are extremely difficult to describe with drawings and documents. Now, we know this problem is not a simple solve, and to solve it, you need to have the technical knowledge and expertise. And DAD has been created by one of Australia's leading electrical control and safety systems engineers, and it's an engineering and management software solution designed by people who understand the business. DAD's now being used by some of the world's leading companies across a range of industries, all from small $50,000 projects to large billion-dollar undertakings. And this approach to engineering is so different that it's changing the way that we think about the design and management of complex networks. Let's jump into these 3 features that I mentioned that we're going to showcase. And the first feature that we're going to look at is the improved user interface that includes overall system management views. And this enhanced interface we feel is of particular benefit to management, as it enables users to be able to navigate the complexities of modern systems in a much simpler way. You'll see on this first screenshot here that this front screen of DADX brings to life the actual asset for users. In this particular example, you can see a description at the bottom of this particular image that this model describes the power and control system for a hard rock crushing plant. It also sets up a better segregation of model layers that you can see here on the left of screen. For those unfamiliar with layers, they are an advanced feature of DAD that allows users to define different aspects of a system without overburdening the base hardware layer. And then on this particular front screen, if you hover over each of these particular layers, it provides a description of what that layer is. Now, in this particular model example, you can see that there is a hardware, software, process, and switching layer, and that the layers can be related in DAD by linking objects. And as I mentioned, as you're able to hover over each of these particular layers, you're able to see the particular description of what that layer is within the model. Okay, let's jump into the hardware layer to be able to have a look at this. and to be able to demonstrate in this particular layer, feature 1 and feature 2. The hardware layer is the easiest layer to be able to understand. If you note here the synopsis of the layer that shows a summary such as the number of components in the layer. So you can see here in this particular synopsis as an example that this particular hardware layer has 325 components. So it's a small system. Then to the right of that, you're able to see a summary of the component and connector changes that have been made over certain time periods. On the far left-hand side, up the top, you'll notice a change here in terminology from what was the location view and what has now become the key view. And the terminology key view is an enhancement because it focuses more on the associated function of a component as opposed to its specific location. From a management point of view, you can jump into this particular area and you can right-click and list the quantities, or you can quickly view the statistics. So here you can see that the breakdown here of components within the hardware layer that make up the overall number of 325 components that we identified earlier in the synopsis. In DADX, there's a new tool available up under the Tools section here, which is referred to as the membership distribution. So up front, when you click on membership distribution, it displays the distribution of components by the key view and by the component type. To drill down further, you can simply just drag and drop from either the key view or the component view into the member distribution. Here, we've looked at conveyor 1 and we're arranging the distribution here in this particular area by conveyor 1 so that we can see the distribution of components within it quite easily at a management level. We can then click on any of those particular components to be able to view their attribute data or other additional information in relation to those particular components that are distributed within conveyor 1. In terms of the last part that I'll demonstrate here in relation to feature 1 is the speed that information becomes available to a user. So I can jump up here and switch into edit mode, and very quickly I can create new components within the model. Now, the speed of creating new components within the model is certainly not new to DADX, and those that have used DAD version 13 or previous versions will know that, and will know that the speed in creating things like new components is certainly a core strength of DAD from day one. What I'll do here is just to demonstrate this, I'll just create over here 100 new blocked chute switches and just allocate them into the unspecified folder over here. And you can see as soon as I jump in and turn this into 100 components to create, and it creates them here, and then clicking down on OK, you'll see immediately that in the unspecified section, there's now 100 new components, B chute switches. And immediately, again, at the synopsis level, at management, you can see that the components, which were 325, have immediately jumped to 425 within the model. And you'll also notice that in the component changes, that in the last 24 hours, we've now seen a change to the model of 100 components, and also in the last 7 days, which obviously means, because we know we've just created these new items, that this has been the only change to the model, to this particular layer, in the last 7 days has been the creation of these block chute switches that we've just done. So that's a quick overview and demonstration of the part of the improved user interface, which we're excited about and which we think brings another level of really quick information up to management. Let's have a look at feature 2 that we wanted to call out, and that is in relation to the enhanced description of individual objects. So this is looking at what has been an improved display that shows all the known information about an object, including its data and its background material, its relationships within the overall system, and also its change history. So I think a good way to look at this is to bring yourself back to the front screen of DADX, and you can imagine that we're walking up this particular conveyor that you can see here, which is the window into the asset. So if you imagine that and jump back into the hardware layer, you can then see over on the key view where we've got conveyor 1 there. We're able to then expand that and able to see all of those components that sit within conveyor 1. And really these are what you would observe on the real asset as you imaginary walk up that particular conveyor. This is what you would see, the list of components. So let's pick on one of those particular components, and we're going to have a look at what is named as CV1M. So we're going to have a look at this particular motor. And as we do that, you can see the new and improved interface here that is describing the details of this particular motor. So let's have a look at this particular information. So this first particular screen will show the attribute information that we know. Some of that information has been inherited from higher level folders, and some of that information has been manually entered as it is unique to this specific motor. When we then have a look away from the data and have a look at the background material, we're able to see there files such as photos of the motor. We can see test sheets and vendor information, and then can bring them up quite easily to be able to, again, bring the real asset to life in terms of what users are working on. If we then click, have a look along the top, we can jump into the Relationships tab, and there's more information available to a user through this particular tab. So in this Relationships tab, we can identify the structures that CV1M is part of. We can see here that it sits in the key view. We can see what type of component that it is and which group folders that it is part of. And as an example here, we can see that it has been both installed and terminated because it is part of those particular group folders. So you can quickly see there in the outline of relationships where this particular motor fits within the model. If we then jump and have a look at connections, you can see the motor's connections here. Now, it's really important to note here that this display might appear to be a drawing, but it's not. That is fundamentally different to drawings and documents. It simply shows to the user how it is connected, and those connections can be explored further within this particular workpad by clicking on any of the relevant objects on the workpad, and you can explore those connections further. The next tab to have a look at here is in relation to the layer links. These relate to the relationships that this motor has within the software process and switching layers, and that information is available. And then the final tab, which we know is of great use, and again, is not of particular difference in relation to version 13, but again, comes in a way that is easier to use. And this has the change history, which if you're able to expand that out, it helps to give full transparency to the change management of this particular motor. So when we've expanded that window, we can now see which user made the change, a description of what the change was that they made. We can see the date that they made that particular change, and the time with which they did that. So very quickly, we get a full picture of who made the change, a description of what they did, and the date and time that it was changed, which is really important from a change management point of view to be able to provide that particular audit history within the model. All right, now I'll jump to the third feature that we wanted to share today, and that's the ability to be able to find information. Now, the search spreadsheet in DADX has been completely redeveloped and offers enhanced functionality. For this particular example, we'll have a look at a different model that, as you can see here, has an IO tag layer. And the example that we're going to share here is this search function up here that's highlighted. And we're having a look here at the result of searching for the function block inputs and outputs for PLC03, which you can see there is highlighted in the key view section. So this particular search window, that looks the same as version 13, but the result is certainly different in the new spreadsheet table. And here that is. So the benefits in relation to this particular table or spreadsheet aspect is that you can now use quick and easy filtering on each data column by typing text or partial text or using the qualifiers in the drop down in this example. So we can look at that here. We've typed in cyclone in the particular description and then had a look at some of the qualifiers in the drop down. For example, here we're going to be filtering all the data with cyclone in its particular description. We then also have the opportunity to be able to play around with this and to slice and dice this particular data within this actual sheet. So for example, we can pick up the module type column, and if we drag that column and we drop it up here, you'll then be able to see that the user is able to group data based on the data in that particular column. And to take that a step further, you can then see here that this data grouping can actually be done in multiple levels, as we've shown here. Some might be thinking, it looks like some similar functionality to a pivot table in Excel. What this is really bringing to life in terms of the new sheet here is that ability to be able to work within the data within DAD, as opposed to having to be able to export and import back in using Excel. We can also demonstrate here that this, again, Excel-like conditional formatting that can be applied to data columns to be able to show duplicate values, greater than, less than, etc. So again, to re-emphasize, this has been completely redeveloped. It's a really powerful part of DADX, and it enables you to be able to, or any user to be able to stay within DAD and to be able to perform these types of data management tasks. Okay, in the short time that we've had today, they are three of the key features that we wanted to be able to showcase. We've got some DAD experts on hand here to be able to answer any questions that have come through the Q&A. So we'll get to those in a minute because we've actually had three questions that have come through that I just want to deal with quickly up front. And the first one, which many of you might be thinking is, we're using version 13, can we still do everything in DADX? Great question. DADX is a further move towards the future and away from traditional practices such as drawings. However, version 13 is still available, and we understand that for some organisations the move towards an ideal state gets taken in steps. But just to note, if a project is done with version 13, at any point that data can be upgraded easily to DADX. So hopefully that answers that first particular question. The second question is a little related to the first question. The one that's come through is, does Activity Exchange work with DADX? And I'd answer that in a similar way to question number one. Yes, it does. For those that are unfamiliar, Activity Exchange is a third-party project delivery and maintenance solution, and it can be fully integrated to a digital model in DAD. It works exactly the same with DADX as it does with version 13.1. And then the other question that's come through that I'll just address as well before we throw to the Q&A function is someone's noticed that the tabs for saved layouts and folder reports are not there. Good observation. Again, I would go back to my earlier answer there, that DADX is a further move towards the future. Now, in relation to saved layouts, the ability to be able to create the workpad layouts has not changed in DADX. What has changed is that they are now stored as PDF files. With regards to folder reports, feature 3 that I just demonstrated on how we've opened up and enhanced the new spreadsheet capability has effectively made folder reports redundant. Given the time that we've got in today's webinar, if anybody has any further questions on this particular area in relation to those particular observations, please reach out to us outside of this webinar and we can certainly discuss that.